The Audi. Written by ShiningEve. Read by just some fangirl. Summary. How Peter and Bucky went from buying a Volkswagen to an Audi R8. It was that or a Porsche Macan, Tony said. When Peter turned 16, he got his driver's license. He owed a big part of it to his dad, who had taught him how to drive in the middle of an abandoned parking lot in Russia when they were still working under Hydra. But instead of learning how to do sharp, fast turns while leaning out of a window and shooting a gun, he was cruising down a street at around 30 miles per hour. To him, it was boring. But anyways, he passed. Yeah. Now he had to get a car. For a billionaire who could easily buy 40 Lamborghini Aventators and still be able to afford a private jet, he was rather protective of his cars. Peter could borrow one, but he knew Tony would never let him. Besides, Peter and Bucky had been saving up. They could afford something small and useful. Besides, why would a high schooler need a Rolls Royce? Peter had done some research. He had found a respectable priced used Volkswagen. He was going to take the bus there with Bucky and Natasha to check out its credentials. He was walking out of the elevator, putting on his watch, when he saw Tony standing in front of him with his arms crossed. He had a disturbed and confused look on his face. Peter didn't know why. Need help with something, Stark? Lost the keys to Cayman number 6? Tony smirked cockily at him before waving a finger in Peter's face. Seriously? A Volkswagen? A used one? If you're going to be living in my tower, you're gonna have an Audi. Or more, no less. Peter sighed. He couldn't afford an Audi, much less a brand new one. He could probably get an 8-year-old one with about 50,000 miles for about the same amount as a Volkswagen. But before he could protest, Tony grabbed him and Bucky, who had just exited the elevator. Tony pushed them into his red R8, ignoring Bucky's angry shouts. 20 minutes later, they were walking through a top-of-the-line Audi dealership, and all Peter could think was, I don't have the money. When the salesman went to get the keys and a license for a test drive, Peter cornered Tony. Tony, why are we here? I don't have enough money for this. Tony frowned. Enough money? I'm paying for it. Peter blanched. Tony, no. Tony just gave him a blank stare. Happy belated birthday present. Get it? Peter walked away, shaking his head. They ended up buying a dark silver Audi R8. Peter had wanted to get something more moderate, but this was Tony. Bucky had stayed silent most of the time, preferring to stand there and look intimidating. He had tried to help Peter talk Tony out of getting the R8, but Tony wasn't fazed. The car salespeople were pretty terrified of Peter and Bucky. When they stood next to each other in their tight leather jackets, crossed arms, combat boots, and angry glares, more than a few of the salesmen ran away. Besides, Peter's hair was steadily reaching the same length as Bucky's. When they got back to the tower, with Tony driving his car and Peter and Bucky in the other, they saw Pepper and Natasha waiting for them. Where's the Volkswagen? Why are you in an Audi? Natasha asked. Pepper rounded on Tony, who put his hands up in an I surrender movement, backing up towards the cars. It's a long story, Bucky sighed. I'll tell you later, Peter muttered, heading toward the elevator. Driving to school in an Audi R8 was going to be a nightmare. On Monday, Peter drove his new Audi to the corner spot in the parking lot. Hopefully, no one would notice. Thankfully, no one did. Peter was still mad at Tony, though. End of story.